All right, so we're diving into some of the stuff you sent over
Okay.
about the legal side of email marketing,
Yeah, yeah.
which is something that, I feel like a lot of people don't think about until it's too late,
Exactly.
and then they're in trouble,
100%.
So we are going to be looking at this blogwidow.com article,
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
boil it down to
Yeah.
what are the things that people who are running businesses online need to know
Absolutely.
to, not end up in hot water.
Yeah, it's the stuff that like nobody wants to deal with,
Yeah.
but it is so important because the fines and the the hits to your brand reputation that can come from not following these rules are
Yeah.
huge.
And not only that, just the loss of trust with your customers.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
You know.
Like you're building a house, you need to have a solid foundation.
Yeah.
And this legal compliance stuff is that foundation for your email marketing.
Yeah. Okay, so this article breaks it down into 7 key legal compliance tips.
Right.
So I figure we can kind of use those as our
It's good.
guideposts here.
Love it.
So the first one is understanding the key email marketing laws.
Okay.
So, it's like you can't play the game if you don't know the rules.
Right, exactly. And you know what's interesting is that a lot of these laws, while the specifics can be a little different from country to country,
Right.
the general principles are very similar.
Yeah.
Like being upfront with people, getting their permission to contact them.
Yeah.
And respecting their choices if they want to opt out.
Right.
So those are kind of the golden rules that run through all of this legislation.
Okay, so the article specifically calls out 3 major pieces of legislation.
Right.
First up, the CAN-SPAM Act,
Okay.
which is here in the U.S.
Yeah.
So what are the must-knows for us with that one?
So CAN-SPAM is all about protecting consumers from, misleading or unsolicited emails. And there are a few key things that the article highlights that you absolutely have to comply with, like having clear sender information in your emails.
Okay.
So you can't be hiding behind some sort of like vague address.
Right.
You have to have that unsubscribe mechanism in every single email that you send out. And it has to be easy to find, and it has to actually work.
Yeah.
And no deceptive subject lines.
Okay.
So you can't be promising people like a huge discount
Right.
if there isn't one or something like that.
Yeah, and what happens if you mess that up? What happens if you...
If you violate CAN-SPAM,
Yeah.
the penalties can be pretty hefty.
Yeah.
We're talking thousands of dollars per violation.
Okay, so we want to avoid that.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so then we
Yes,
head
certainly.
across the pond to Europe and the GDPR,
Right.
which has a reputation for being very serious about privacy.
Oh, yeah. GDPR is definitely a big one. It puts a huge emphasis on individual rights and control over their data.
Okay.
So one of the cornerstones of GDPR is this idea of explicit consent. So you can't just assume that it's okay to email someone.
Right.
You have to have their clear permission to do so.
Yeah.
They need to opt in
Right.
to your email list,
Yeah.
and they have the right to withdraw that consent at any time.
So they can unsubscribe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, the fines for violating GDPR can be really substantial.
Okay, so you're talking big numbers here.
Yeah. Yeah, big numbers. We're talking potentially millions of dollars for serious violations.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's not something to be taken lightly.
Okay, so explicit consent, not implied.
Right. Explicit consent
Got it.
has to be clear. Yes.
Okay, and then we look north of the border to Canada.
Yep.
And CASL Canada's anti-spam legislation.
That's right.
How does that one compare?
So CSL has some similarities to GDPR. It also requires consent before you can send any commercial electronic messages.
Okay.
And it also requires clear sender identification and an easy way to unsubscribe.
Right.
But one thing that's interesting about CASL that the article points out is how broad it is. It covers not just like your typical marketing emails, but it can also apply to messages that have like even a hint of a promotional element to them.
So if you're trying to be sneaky and slide in some promotion.
You've got to be really careful
Got it.
with CASL because they're pretty strict about that.
Okay, so even if you think you're being helpful, sending out information, but you slip in a little, hey, buy my product.
Yeah, if you're encouraging people to make a purchase or sign up for something,
Yeah.
you got to make sure you have their consent.
Got it. Okay. And the article makes a really important point that it's not just these 3. There are lots of
Tons of laws out there.
different laws.
Yeah, depending on where you're doing business.
Right. And it depends on where your customers are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got to think about where your audience is located.
Right.
Not just where your business is based.
Okay, so that gets even more complicated if you have customers all over the world.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why the article suggests that if you're unsure about which laws apply to your specific situation, it's always a good idea to consult with a legal professional.
Okay.
Who can give you tailored advice.
Better safe than sorry.
100%.
All right. So we've kind of laid the groundwork. Now we know the big three.
Okay.
So let's move on to tip number 2.
Right.
Which is obtaining explicit consent.
Right.
And they really hammer this home in the article.
Yeah, they do. And for good reason. It's really the gold standard now.
Okay.
They talk about opt-in versus opt-out.
Yeah.
And while, in the past, opt-out might have been okay in certain situations, now explicit opt-in is really the best practice.
Okay. And just so we're clear, what is the difference?
Yeah. So opt-in means that someone has to actively check a box or take some action to say, yes, I want to receive these emails.
Right.
Opt-out means that they're automatically signed up.
Okay.
Unless they specifically say they don't want to be.
Good.
So it's kind of like you're assuming they want it unless they tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
Whereas opt-in is like getting that clear. Yes.
Yeah.
Up front.
Got it. Okay. So, and they're saying opt-in is the best practice globally.
Yeah, because not only does it ensure that you're complying with the strictest laws out there, but it also has some benefits for your business.
What kind of benefits?
Well, when people actively choose to receive your emails, you're basically building a list of subscribers who are actually interested in what you have to say.
Right.
So you're more likely to see higher open rates, higher click-through rates.
So more engagement.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Plus, you're less likely to be flagged as spam.
Right.
Because people have actually given you permission to be in their inbox.
Okay.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah, it seems like it's better to have a smaller list that's more engaged.
Definitely quality over quantity.
So how do you actually go about getting this explicit consent the right way?
Well, the article mentions a couple of things. First, you got to make sure you're using those clear opt-in check boxes on your sign-up forms.
Okay.
So no pre-check boxes.
Right.
People have to actively click it.
Got it.
And then you also need to be really clear and upfront about what kind of emails people are signing up for.
Okay, so tell them what they're going to get.
Exactly. So whether it's newsletters, promotional offers, product updates, whatever it is, lay it all out.
Got it.
So they know exactly what they're getting into.
So transparency is really key.
Yeah, transparency is huge.
Okay.
It's all about building trust.
All right, so tip number 3 is providing clear opt-out options.
Okay.
Which you would think is kind of a no-brainer.
Right, it should be.
But the article makes it clear that it's also a legal requirement.
Yeah, it's not just good manners, it's the law.
So remind us what the law says about this.
So CAN-SPAM, GDPR, CASL, they all say that every single marketing email that you send has to have that visible and functional unsubscribe link.
Okay.
It's usually at the bottom of the email.
Right.
But it needs to be easy to find.
Yeah.
And it needs to work.
Okay. And how complicated should that process be?
It should be as simple as possible, ideally one click.
Okay.
They shouldn't have to jump through hoops or fill out a bunch of forms to unsubscribe.
Right.
And you need to honor those requests promptly.
Okay.
So within a few business days, ideally.
So make it easy to leave, and when they want to leave, make it happen quickly.
Exactly.
Okay. Tip number 4 is be transparent about data use.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about this with consent, but this seems to be a broader thing.
It is. Yeah. So these days, people are really concerned about their privacy.
Right.
And they have a right to know what data you're collecting about them.
Yeah.
How you're using it and whether you're sharing it with anyone else.
And how do most businesses handle this?
Well, a lot of businesses will include a link to their privacy policy in their emails.
Okay.
And that document should outline all of their data practices.
So it's all spelled out.
Yeah, as much as possible.
Yep.
And it's not just about avoiding legal trouble.
Right.
It's also about building trust with your subscribers.
Yeah.
When people feel like you're being upfront with them,
right,
they're more likely to do business with you.
Okay, so tip number 5, avoid misleading subject lines and content.
All right.
I feel like that's kind of common sense.
You would think so.
But apparently it's still a problem.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. Some people still try to get away with it.
So what's the problem with misleading subject lines?
Well, first of all, it can get you flagged as spam by email providers.
Right.
Because they're looking for those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Like if your subject line is promising something amazing,
right,
but then the email doesn't deliver.
Right.
That's a red flag.
And you can get in trouble legally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Like canned spam specifically prohibits deceptive subject lines.
Okay.
So if you're promising a discount that doesn't exist or something like that, you could be in violation.
Okay. And beyond the legal stuff, what about just the customer relationship?
Right. Even if you manage to avoid the spam filters, if people feel like they've been tricked into opening your email,
right,
they're going to lose trust in you.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to get back.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so honesty is the best policy.
Always.
Okay. Tip number 6 is keep detailed records. Yeah. Which doesn't sound very fun.
Not the most glamorous part of the job.
But important.
But super important.
Why is it so important?
Well, because it can protect you.
Okay.
If you ever get audited or if someone files a complaint against you,
right,
you need to be able to prove that you're following the rules.
So what kind of records are we talking about here?
So you need to keep records of when and how you got consent from each subscriber.
Okay.
The content of all your emails and any unsubscribe requests that you receive.
Got it.
Basically anything that can demonstrate your compliance.
So you're covered.
Yeah, you got to cover your bases.
Okay.
And plus, it's helpful for you to have this data anyway, right? You can track things like your unsubscribe rates.
Okay.
And see how your emails are performing.
So it's both a legal protection and a business tool.
Exactly.
All right, last but not least, tip number 7.
Right, let's hear it.
Regularly review compliance guidelines.
Okay.
Which is a reminder that these laws aren't static.
No, they're constantly changing.
So how do you keep up with all the changes?
Well, the article suggests a few things, like subscribing to legal newsletters.
Okay.
That focus on digital marketing and compliance.
Yeah.
Attending webinars, or even consulting with a lawyer who specializes in this area.
Okay.
The key is to be proactive.
Right.
You don't want to wait until you get that nasty gram from a regulator to realize that you're out of compliance.
So regular checkups?
Yeah, regular checkups are essential.
Okay, so it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
No, it's an ongoing process.
All right, so to sum it all up, it seems like the big takeaway here is that you have to be transparent with your audience. You have to get their permission to email them. Yeah. And you have to make it easy for them to unsubscribe if they want to.
That's it in a nutshell.
And if you don't.
And if you don't, the consequences can be pretty serious.
Yeah, you're talking fines, lawsuits, damage to your reputation.
All of the above.
Not good.
Not good at all.
Okay, so one final thing.
Yeah.
This Blog Widow article has a disclaimer at the bottom saying that this is all just for informational purposes.
Yeah.
It's not legal advice.
Of course not.
Which I think is an important reminder for all of us.
Definitely.
That, you know, every business is different. Yeah. Every situation is unique.
Right.
And so, you know, what might work for one business might not work for another.
Exactly.
And you should always consult with a legal professional if you have any specific questions.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, what questions are coming up for you, listener, as you think about these regulations in your own online business?
Right.
What further research might you need to do? What steps might you need to take?
Yeah, what kind of expert advice do you need to seek out?
To make sure that you are staying compliant and protecting yourself and your business.
Yeah, it's definitely worth taking the time to figure all of this out.
Absolutely. All right, thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.